A man who would change the world was born in the Roman-occupied city of Bethlehem, Jesus Christ. The Gospel of Luke says, "In those days a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be registered." This was the first registration when Quirinius was governor of Syria, and all went to be registered, each to his own town. Luke 2:1-3. This census was an essential factor in Roman society because it established the population counts in these various communities, making it possible to tax these various citizens. So the highly pregnant Mary and her betrothed husband Joseph had to travel 90 miles on foot from Nazareth to Bethlehem to complete this legally required Roman census. When they arrived in Bethlehem, many other descendants of the King of David, or members of the Jewish faith, were also going to Bethlehem for the census. They found out that there was no room for them in the inn, so they were forced to take shelter in a stable where Mary gave birth to Jesus. Jesus was later named King of the Jews. After Jesus' birthday and the completion of the census, Mary and Joseph returned to Nazareth with their extraordinary son. As the years of Jesus went on, stories about him grew. More and more followers began to worship Jesus as their Messiah. They claim that he can catch an endless amount of fish. They claim that he can cure the blind. And they claim that he was the Son of God. So these followers, specifically his disciples, started to write down his entire life journey. 4 of his closest disciples, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, wrote down the main chunks of the book in these parts called Gospels. Each of these Gospels covered almost all of the same events, the narrative life of Jesus Christ. This narrative testimony of a child born in a stable changed the world forever. Even though many loved Jesus, some viewed him as a threat. Emperor Tiberius succeeded Augustus and reigned from 14 AD to 37 AD. Tiberius was notorious for his delators, a network of informants rewarded for spying and reporting on suspected traitors and criminals. Criminals reported on by the delators had to face a treason trial, often resulting in executions or forced suicides. His prefect of Judea at the time, Pontius Pilate, was no stranger to the harsh punishment of traitors. As Jesus was influencing more and more people, he became more of a political threat. So, following the guidelines of Emperor Tiberius, Pilate was given no practical political choice other than to execute Jesus on the cross. Roman law was evident then. One must follow the emperor's will or else they will perish. As Jesus was crucified on the cross, a new religion was born: Christianity. In the beginning, Christianity was just a small sect of Judaism. Nevertheless, its growth would be unparalleled. Paul of Taurus would take the word of his chosen Lord across the known world. From Greece to Turkey to Syria, the word of Jesus Christ spread. His missionary tales are now documented in the New Testament as the Book of Acts. The more Paul went to different places, the more followers he gained. On the same token, it created more enemies. The divide between monotheism and polytheism was on the rise. It was beginning to get a lot tougher for Romans to accept a religious population that didn't believe in gods like Mars and Jupiter. So when the Great Fire of Rome occurred in July of 64 AD, Emperor Nero quickly blamed it on the Christians. The Great Fire was an event that destroyed 2/3 of the city of Rome. So, in order to pay for these massive repairs, Nero instituted heavy tributes across the empire. To meet at least a proportion of the costs, Nero also started to print more Roman currency, creating an inflationary effect for the first time in the empire's history. However, the individuals who lived under Roman rule, which wasn't in Rome proper, were upset by this new policy. So, in the holy city of Jerusalem in 66 AD, a revolt was on. At first, the first Jewish revolt succeeded, and the Jewish forces quickly expelled the unprepared Roman army. Then, the rebels gained some traction in the neighboring villages in Galilee. In response, the Roman Emperor Nero sent the general Vespasian to meet the Jewish forces. an endeavor that pushed most rebels into Jerusalem proper by the time Vespasian was proclaimed emperor in 69 CE. Then, around Passover in 70 AD, Vespasian and his forces sieged the city, depleting it of food and water within the walls of Jerusalem. The Jews started to quarrel within, leaving them more vulnerable to attack. By August, the Romans breached the defenses, killed much of the population, and destroyed many of their holy sites. With the Jews decimated, the strength of polytheism lived long. Then, in 98 to 117 AD, under Emperor Trajan, the Roman Empire was able to expand its greatest territorial extent, spanning all the way from modern-day Britain to the Persian Gulf. Roman rule was everywhere. Well, except for in the Americas, because the Romans didn't even know they existed. In the Americas, we can see the growth of various civilizations across the Andes located in modern-day Peru and Chile. The Mochi civilization was able to build monumental structures, like the Huaca del Sol and Huaca de la Luna, impressive pyramids that were the center of their religions. They also created advanced fertilization techniques that used bird droppings as fertilizer. Their highly centralized government made everyone know their place in society. While a little bit more south, the Nazca civilization is one enthralled in mystery. The people of Nazca created a series of large-scale geoglyph consisting of hundreds of individual figures, including geometric shapes, animals, and human-like figures, by removing the dark reddish-brown iron oxide-coated pebbles covering the surface of the Nazca Desert. These lines are now called Nazca Lines, the purpose of which is still unknown to this day and subject to conspiracy theory today. Around 100 AD, the Zapotecs started establishing Monte Alban, their capital. It was one of the first examples of urban planning in the Americas. The city was laid out in a grid pattern, with main roads and smaller side streets leading to plazas and public buildings. The city was also divided into different districts, each with specialized functions, such as residential, administrative, and religious, leaving it to be in use for 1,000 years after that. While back in Rome, after the end of Trajan's reign in 117 AD, a new emperor with a purpose was in hand. Hadrian was a man tasked with a near impossible, keeping the massive Roman Empire under one rule. He first had to deal with a crisis with the newly colonized Roman Britain. Like their predecessors in Judea, the Roman Brits did not like being Roman, so they started to cause unrest, and in the eyes of Hadrian, a real threat of revolution was on his mind. So Hadrian had ordered a massive wall, aptly named Hadrian's Wall, which spanned almost coast to coast, keeping it sunk in the conquered people's minds that the Romans were here, staving off revolution in one region. However, in Galilee, things weren't as peaceful. Simon Bar Kokhba led a rebellion of the Jewish people to free themselves from Roman rule. As you see, Rome was developing a new city called Aelia Capitolina over the ruins of Jerusalem, from the last revolt with temples dedicated to polytheistic gods like Jupiter. By 132, Bar Kokhba took the bottle of Nasi, head of state. Many Jews regarded him as the Messiah who would save the Jewish people and restore their independence. Kokhba's troops would storm Aelia Capitolina, almost knocking out entirely the Roman garrison controlling the city. Hadrian, though, would not have it, so he sent a force of 120,000 men to the lands of Judea to conquer and force the Jewish people into submission. As Cassius Dio says in the History of Rome, 50 of their most important outposts and 985 of their most famous villages were razed. 580,000 men were slain in the various raids and battles, and the number of those that perished by famine, disease, and fire was past finding out. Thus, nearly the whole of Judea was made desolate. History of Rome 69.14, 1-2. Rome made it clear that it was not to be taken lightly. While in China, the message was quite different. The ideas of Buddhism were spreading, along with the Chinese philosophies of Confucianism and Taoism, and built a dynasty. These three philosophies worked together to make the Han Dynasty stronger and more united in many ways. While in America, the Mayan architects went across northern Petén and designed a series of short, broad temples with wide staircases flanked by enormous stucco masks. These stucco masks were made of plaster and some burned and powdered limestone. The Mayans built these stone armatures into elaborate deity faces to capture the soul of the gods and bring it to the people. A temple like the E7 sub, yes, historians name Mayan temples like military submarines, is a pyramid with 16 stucco masks. Each allows us to go deeper into the souls of these deities of the past. In the Middle East, a new empire was emerging with roots in the past. A man named Ardashir claimed to have royal blood that traced all the way back to Cyrus the Great. Ardashir claimed that he should be the true ruler of the Persian Empire, not those frauds of the Parthians. Ardashir was able to unite the various tribes of Persia. In 224 AD, Ardashir I led his forces against the Parthian king Artabanus V in a significant battle at Hormozgan. The Sasanian forces, known for their cavalry, defeated the Parthians and captured Artabanus V. With this victory, Ardashir I declared himself king and established the Sasanian Empire. Ardashir I quickly established a centralized government and built a new capital at Ctesiphon on the Tigris River. He re-established the Zoroastrian religion, which had been suppressed by the Parthians, as the empire's official religion.
Letnie projekty idą pełną parą. Zapraszamy do naszych sklepów i na stronę jula.pl.
He also built a powerful military machine with skilled cavalry and archers. He began to expand his territory by conquering neighboring regions. As the Parthians were on their way out, so were the Han. The Han dynasty's downfall was marked by political instability, economic problems, external threats, internal rebellions, and power struggles. The weakening of central authority allowed regional warlords to seize power, and the government's attempts to address economic issues were unsuccessful. External threats and rebellions weakened the dynasty even further. A warlord named Cao Pi declared himself emperor and established the Wei dynasty, officially ending the Han dynasty. While back in Rome, Emperor Diocletian, 284 to 305, faced a problem. Rome was becoming too large and impossible to manage. So Diocletian created the Tetrarchy and divided the region into 4, where each region was governed by a separate emperor. Within the Tetrarchy, there were 2 types of emperors, Augustus and Caesars. Diocletian chose Maximian to be his equal to Augustus. In contrast, Galerius and Constantius were appointed to be Caesars. However, this system created uncontrolled chaos and anarchy. Each emperor had desires for power and ambition, and it all came to a head in 305 when power shifted. Both Diocletian and Maximian retired, and in 306, Constantius died. 3 out of the 4 original leaders were left out of the system, leading to a power vacuum to come. Emperor Constantine the Great was appointed by his father's army unilaterally as an Augustus and a Caesar at the same time to replace his father. At the same time, Maximin's son Maxentius felt as though he should have been appointed Caesar instead of Valerius Severus. So in 307, Maxentius sent his army and forced Valerius Severus to surrender. Come 308, Galerius appointed Licinius to replace him. So on the west side of Rome, 2 emperors wanted to rule. Constantine ruled over Gaul and Britain, and Maxentius ruled Italy and North Africa. Maxentius had a difficult time consolidating his power, and he faced increasing resistance from the people of Rome. To try and secure his hold on power, Maxentius ordered the construction of a new bridge across the Tiber River near Rome, known as the Milvian Bridge. Constantine saw Maxentius as a threat to his power, so he decided to march on Rome to confront him. As the two armies approached each other near the Milvian Bridge, Constantine had a vision of a cross